everything. Ground listens, footsteps trusted without permission. Storms come rehearsed, stillness stays unscripted. Motion breaks first, structure waits. The ground doesn't panic, it holds. The ground doesn't panic, it absorbs. The ground doesn't panic, and everything returns to it. Noise burns energy fast, weight conserves it. Foundations outlast forecasts, silence outlives alarms. Nothing reacts, everything endures. Pressure reveals form, not volume. The ground doesn't panic while skies fall apart. The ground doesn't panic while directions collapse. The ground doesn't panic, that's why it remains. Stability doesn't chase balance, it becomes it. Those who stand longest rarely move first. The ground doesn't panic, it waits. Heat distorts judgment, cold sharpens lines. Fog lifts when emotion steps back. Nothing personal, nothing blurred. Distance isn't absence, it's precision. Cold is clear, cuts through noise. Cold is clear, separates truth from wish. Cold is clear, and clarity lasts. Still hands drop, straighter lines. Quiet minds see exits early. Sentiment clouds timing, discipline keeps it exact. No warmth wasted, no focus lost. Control isn't cruelty, it's alignment. Cold is clear, no confusion carry. Cold is clear, no regret store. Cold is clear, that's how decisions stand. Mistake it for emptiness. It's space, it's vision. Cold is clear. And clarity decides. Growth is not always celebrated by the people who knew you before it happened. There's a version of yourself that fits the room you started in, that sits right in the ceiling of the place you grew up in. And the people in that room don't always celebrate the day you discover that the ceiling is a thing you've grown away. Not with anger and not loudly, just the quiet of the fact that the man you're in the process of becoming can't go back to the posture and the smallness and the shape the room requires. Every exit from a small place leaves somebody feeling tired. Not abandonment, not arrogance, just the cost of moving forward. Clarity will cost you what the comfortable can't spare. It will empty certain rooms and leave the cold air there. Every level that you reach will ask for something at the door. The people who can't grow with you were never meant to follow you further. The cost of clarity, what understanding always takes. The cost of clarity. I've sat across from men I loved inside a younger year and felt the conversation hit a wall that wasn't there, when we were both still building in the same unfinished dark, before the roads diverged and left their separate marks. No villain in the story and no wound worth holding long, just two men on different frequencies that used to share a song. The saddest kind of distance isn't anger, it's the space between two people growing in completely different ways. Some roots were meant for seasons, not for decades and not years. The tree that outgrows every fence still honors what was here, not by staying small inside it, not by shrinking to the fit, but by carrying the soil that it first grew strong in. Now I hold the old connections with the loose and open hand. Not every bond is permanent and not all were planned. For the distance, some were bridges and some bridges serve the span. And the bridge is done is crossing, it's still part of how you ran into the person standing on the other side of it. I don't erase the road I walked, I just no longer sit down in the middle of it, waiting for the past to catch. The clearest form of gratitude is living past the place you hatched. Move forward without apology. Clarity will cost you what the comfortable can't spare. It will empty certain rooms and leave the cold air there. Every level that you reach will ask for something at the door. The people who can't grow with you were never meant to follow you further. The cost of clarity, what understanding always takes. The cost of clarity. Paint the room, leave the room. Don't mistake the door for the destination. Every word spent carelessly is a word that no longer carries weight. Spend them like a man who knows they're finite. A man who speaks on everything, there's nothing left to say. Words are only weighted by the silence in their way. The spaces between sentences are where the meaning lives, not in volume and not in frequency, in what the stillness gives. Watched a man explain himself for 20 minutes straight, every word a little weaker than the one that came late. By the end the room had moved its eyes to somewhere else, a waterfall of language that had spent itself to melt. One sentence that lands is worth more than an hour that doesn't. Gravity of silence, every word pulls double weight. When the man who rarely speaks decides to finally stay, what he's kept inside the vault of his deliberate restraint. Say less than you know and mean more than you say. That's the whole constraint. Gravity of silence, the economy of truth. Gravity of silence. There is a kind of man who fills the room because the room is there, who mistakes the sound of his own voice for something worth the air, who talks across the depth of things and calls the surface understanding, who hasn't learned that silence is the highest form of commanding. Then there is the other kind, the one the room leans toward, who hasn't spoken in an hour and the hour hasn't bored anyone inside it. They're all waiting for the word that a man like that delivers, maybe twice across the herd. The Japanese have a word for it, the pause, the space between. The architecture of the unsaid is where the weight convenes. Not emptiness, intentional, not absent, just withheld. The gravity increases with every word not held. Now I ration what I offer by the worth of what is asked, not in coldness and not cruelty, in the discipline of craft. Every sentence earns its placement like a stone inside a wall. One unnecessary word and you've compromised them all. The deepest conversations I have had were mostly still, two men in the understanding that the words were not the skill. The skill was in the sitting with the weight of what was known. The most powerful thing a man can say is sometimes nothing at all. And own it. Hold the silence, let it work. Gravity of silence, every word pulls double weight. When the man who rarely speaks decides to finally stay, what he's kept inside the vault of his deliberate restraint. Say less than you know and mean more than you say. That's the whole constraint. Gravity of silence, the economy of truth. Gravity of silence, the right word at the right moment, preceded by everything you chose not to say. Fog rolls low across the valley where the rivers run cold. Old bridges creak under burdens that the daylight never told. Footsteps fall measured, never hurried, never loud, carrying loads that would break men who need a crowd. Power doesn't announce the mountain, it has moved. The weight is carried back speaks its name. The weight is carried best when no one sees the strain. Quiet power bends the world and never speaks its name. Gather heavy, lightning cracks the open sky, while others curse the heavens. One figure simply passes by. The current shifts around him like water around a stone, leaving no ripple wider than the current on its own. Years stacked like silent stones into a wall no eye can climb. Discipline becomes the mortar, patience keeps the line. Respect arrives uninvited, earned in the unseen hours, where rage would only scatter what restraint empowers. The weight is carried best when no one sees the strain. Quiet power bends the world and never speaks its name. The weight is carried best when no one sees the strain. Quiet power bends the world and never speaks its name. Bonfires blaze in the distance, feeding on dry acclaim. Voices rise and crack like kindling in the flame. Come on in only ashes, drift across the frozen ground, while one shadow walks onward, where no cheers resound. Time is the only judge that never needs a witness. Respect grows slow in soil where the loud have burned away. What remains is earth not given, and it never has to say. Respect grows slow in soil where the loud have burned away. What remains is earth not given, and it never has to say. Promises scatter like sparks that die before they land. Fame is just another fire no steady hand can command. Discipline plants its roots deep beneath a winter frost, waiting for the season when all the noise is lost. Legends fade to footnotes written by forgetting hands, while the quiet current carves canyons no crowd understands. Authority settles heavy on shoulders that never asked, built from years of of holding course when easier paths collapsed. Respect grows slow in soil where the loud have burned away. What remains is earned, not given, and it never has to say. Respect grows slow in soil where the loud have burned away. What remains is earned, not given, and it never has to say. Footsteps steady without glancing back. No echoes worth answering. What's unfinished stays behind on purpose. Breath stays even, direction stays forward. Fear runs loud, peace walks quiet. Nothing's chasing me, that's the difference. Nothing's chasing me, no weight on the spine. Nothing's chasing me, only ground ahead. Urgency belongs to the hunted, stillness belongs to the prepared. No debts unpaid, no words hanging, past days closed without locks. No alarms set, no exits mapped. Nothing's chasing me, that's real control. Nothing's chasing me, that's a real pace. Nothing's chasing me, that's why steps are slow. Freedom isn't escape, it's resolution. Standing still inside motion. Nothing's chasing me, and nothing ever was. Cracks appear where structure was borrowed. What's built inside doesn't show stress. No leaks, no collapse. Pressure doesn't break form, it reveals it. Held together under full weight. Held together, no reinforcement needed. Held together, that's the design. repetition. Compact just until automatic. No bracing, no shaking. Tension and the structure remains held together while others split. Held together while noise fractures. Held together without effort. Integrity doesn't show itself until tested. Then it stands without announcement. Held together. Always was. Nothing permanent was built in the summer. The lasting things were built in the cold. When the comfortable season left and took its warmth alone, most men followed it to somewhere soft and called that moving on. A few men stayed and turned to face the field left cold and bare, and started building in the silence that the summer wouldn't share. There's a quality in winter work that summer never teaches, where their hands grow callous past the frost and past the point it reaches. In the comfort where the discipline becomes its own degree of warmth, the kind that lives in marrow, not in temperature, not endurance, not survival. Architecture built from difficulty. Winter architecture laid in cold and set in frost. Every beam a thing that costs more than the summer ever cost. The structure holds because the conditions it was built in were severe. What a man constructs in his worst season is the only thing built to last a year. Winter architecture, the blueprint drawn in dark. Winter architecture. Every master of a craft has winters they don't speak about. Years of diminishing return and long internal drought, where the work went underground and produced nothing on the surface. And the less a man would have renegotiated his purpose. But the winter underground is where the root systems grow wide, where the architecture of the future is assembled on the inside. What looks like stagnation from the outside looking in is construction at a depth that summer workers never begin. The Japanese fold swords by folding in the cold, not despite the winter's hardness, but because of what it holds. Each fold a layer added, each layer something true. The winter doesn't weaken steel, it decides what steel can do. Now I read my winters differently than I did before, not as interruptions, as the entrance to another floor of the building I've been raising since the first cold season hit. Every hardship wasn't material. I just had to learn to fit it into something structural, to find the loaded board, to place it where the weight it carried served the overall core. There were rooms inside me built entirely from what tried to break. The most important architecture is the kind that pain helped make. Build through it, build from it. Winter architecture, laid in cold and set in frost. Every beam a thing that costs more than the summer ever cost. The structure holds because the conditions it was built in were severe. What a man constructs in his worst season is the only thing built to last a year. Winter architecture, the blueprint drawn in dark. Winter architecture, the summer men built fast, the winter men built right. The difference shows when the next winter comes. The hardest conversation a man will ever have is the one with no audience. Before the verdict or the welcoming a single thing, a man must hold his own court in the room where no one's listening. Must lay his case without the bias of the defense he built, and measure what he finds that past the insulation of his guilt. Not in cruelty and precision, the way a surgeon reads the film, without the patient's feelings altering the discipline. The mirror doesn't argue and the mirror doesn't care. It simply holds the truth of what a man brings to it bare. No excuses, no revisions, just the man and what he knows. No debts to the mirror, every ledger settled clean. No outstanding explanations for the things that you have been. The man who owes the mirror, nothing walks through every door. Accountability is not self-punishment, it's the refusal to keep score. No debts to the mirror, the only audit worth taking. No debts to the mirror. I have been the villain in the chapter I'd prefer to skip. Spoke when I should have held it and let something valuable slip through the hands of my impatience. Watched it shatter on the ground and stood there in the wreckage, trying not to hear the sound of the version of myself I knew was better than the act I committed in the moment where the discipline went slack. There's no honor in the burying, only in the meeting of the mirror and the man with nothing missing and nothing fleeting. The men who never reckon spend their decades in the debt of things they almost did right, and the things they can't forget, not because the world is watching, but because they know the math, and the interest on dishonesty compounds down every path. Now I close the chapters cleanly, mark the ledger and move on. Not with ceremony and not with the weight of carrying it along. What deserves an honest reckoning receives one, nothing more. I don't make a home in my mistakes, I note them and restore the standard that I dropped and then continue on the road. Not lighter from the forgiven, but more accurate in the load that I carry. What belongs to me I carry without noise. The man who owns his errors without trauma owns his poise. Settle the ledger, walk forward clean. No debts to the mirror, every ledger settled clean. No outstanding nothing walks through every door. Accountability is not self-punishment, it's the refusal to keep score. No debts to the mirror. The only audit worth taking. No debts to the mirror. Look at it clearly, name it honestly. Close the book, walk out. Clocks tick heavy in the room where decisions are made alone. Candles burn low while the reckless chase the unknown. One steady breath measures every calculated move, turning chaos into order that the frantic cannot prove. Discipline is the chain that only the wearer controls. The line holds when everything else has already been. Discipline speaks louder than any word ever spent. The line holds when everything else has already been. Discipline speaks louder than any word ever spent. Temptations whisper soft against the iron of the will, offering shortcuts paved with gold that lesser men would kill. Yet the path stays narrow, measured step by measured stride. Authority earned in silence when no excuses hide. Mountains rise and crumble under centuries of rain, but the unbroken line continues through pleasure and through pain. Respect becomes the shadow that follows without command, cast by a man who answers only to the discipline he's planned. The line holds when everything else has already been. Discipline speaks louder than any word ever spent. The line holds when everything else has already been. Discipline speaks louder than any word ever spent. Footprints filled with snow behind a traveler who never turns. Horizon calls and whispers that the restless never learn. No need to mark the distance or count the miles gone by. The journey is the verdict written only in the sky. Victory needs no witness once the battle is won. He walks ahead where echoes never reach the ear. The man who has already won has nothing left to fear. He walks ahead where echoes never reach the ear. The man who has already won has nothing left to fear. Tears dissolve like morning mist beneath the rising sun. Critics fade to nothing when the work is truly done. Restraint becomes the armor against both praise and blame. Legacy moves forward carrying only its own name. Time stretches long behind him like a river running still, carving canyons quietly according to its will. No explanation offered, no final word required. The forward motion stands complete, fulfilled and quietly inspired. He walks ahead where echoes never reach the ear. The man who has already won has nothing left to fear. He walks ahead where echoes never reach the ear. The man who has already won has nothing left to fear. Stone doesn't fight the river. It doesn't need to. The river already knows who wins. There are men who meet resistance like a force against a force, who spend their energy in combat with the river and its course, who arrive exhausted at the other bank, still unconvinced that the fighting cost them something every time they winced. Then there is the man who sets himself like stone in the terrain, who doesn't meet the current, just receives it like the rain, who calculates in decades while the others count the days, who understands that time itself is the most underrated wage. Not passive, not indifferent, position for the long conclusion. The patience of stone is not the patience of the weak. It's the patience of the certain, of the man who doesn't speak prematurely, who withholds the full weight of his hand. Most men lose because they move before they fully understand. The patience of stone, the long game always wins. The patience of stone. Every empire that rose loud and fast and claimed the sky discovered that the sky belongs to nothing, built in haste. The pyramids were not constructed by the men who rushed the great. They were built by men who understood that permanence is laid one level at a time, without the urgency of now, without the fear that someone else might get to finish first somehow. The long game is the only game that compounds past the grave. It's the only strategy that time itself will ever save. Genghis swept the continent with patience more than force. He waited for the winter and let winter run the course. The general who outlasts is more dangerous than the bold. The stone was always gonna win, the river just wasn't told. Now I watch the fast men spend themselves on battles built for noise, on victories that depreciate as quickly as their voice fades from the attention of the room they briefly held, while I am still assembling what won't need to be retold. Because it will still be standing when the telling is long done, when the men who needed witnesses have faded with the sun. I move at the velocity of something built to stay. The man who outlives his enemies was never in a hurry anyway. Set yourself in place and hold. The patience of stone is not the patience of the weak. It's the patience of the certain, of the man who doesn't speak prematurely, who withholds the full weight of his hand. Most men lose because they move before they fully understand. The patience of stone. The long game always wins. The patience of stone. The river is loud. The stone is quiet. The stone is still there. Real authority never introduced itself. You already felt it before it spoke. Before the title and the throne and all the theater of rain, there was just the man himself, the room, what it drained from his presence at the table. Something gravity provides to the man who leads from what he is and not from what he rides. The uniform, the office, and the podium, and the seal, a scaffolding for those who need the structure to be real. But the authority that lives inside the bone needs nothing warm. It arrived before the introduction. It was simply born from the accumulation of a life lived past the easy, from the discipline of choosing hard when comfortable was breezy. No announcement, no appointment, no permission, just the fact of it. No crown required for the man the room already knows. No introduction for the presence that already shows. In the way he holds the stillness while the others fill the air. A man who needs the title never had the thing the title's there to wear. No crown required. The room already knows. No crown required. Watch the man collect credentials like a shield against the doubt that lived inside the gap between his image and his cloud. Every certificate, a wall between his fear and the exposed truth that what he needed most was something that can't be disclosed on a resume or plaque or by a rumor, not in heads. Real authority is recognized in silence, not in threads of endorsement and affirmation from the similarly rain. It's felt before it's spoken and it doesn't need to be thanked. The wolf doesn't hold a council to establish who commands. The room already redistributed before the alpha stands. Not through cruelty, not through value, just through something in the frame that the rest of the room adjusts itself to without being told to rearrange. Now I walk into the difficult rooms with nothing on my chest. No insignia of office and no ribbon of the blessed. Just the record of the choices and the winters they produce, and the quality of stillness that a tested man is used to move through our position with the minimum of force, to hold the room accountable without abandoning the course. Respect for what is human and the ones who push the wrong command is not a volume setting, it's a frequency held long. Hold the frequency, let the room adjust. No crown required for the man the room already knows. No introduction for the presence that already shows. In the way he holds the stillness while the others fill the air. A man who needs the title never had the thing the title's there to wear. No crown required, the room already knows. No crown required, the room already knew before you walked in. The only question was whether you did. Before it spoke.